Cole, how dare you?
What's up, Aaron? How you doing, man?
So you got asked. Let's get right into it. You got asked what you thought of Alabama Auburn, and you wrote that you thought both would enter next year's Iron Bowl with a 9-2 record, and then all of a sudden, all heck broke loose. What happened?
Yeah, we were on our way back from the beach yesterday, and my wife oftentimes prefers to drive because she's kind of a backseat driver, and I get easily annoyed with her telling me to change lanes and slow down and turn my blinker on and watch out for cars. So we had about 3 or 4 hours left, and our daughter was asleep, and I just said, hey, I'll open it up and answer some Twitter questions. And they came in pretty quick, and most were pretty fair and honest. Some were stupid. And some guy just asked me what I thought Auburn and Alabama's records would be. And I said I thought they'd both be 9-2 going into the Iron Bowl. I think this will be one of those years that it's got a good chance to be one of those years that we kind of dream about in this state, where that game, and we haven't really seen it since 13, means so much that, not only a chance to play in Atlanta, but probably play their way into the playoff. So then the next person asked me who those 2 regular season losses would be, and I went Florida State and I went Mississippi State. So there were a couple different reasons that I did that. Not many people actually asked me for the reason, but I thought it was fun banter. It's February. I like sometimes to try to think outside of the box. Sometimes I overthink things, and I get that and I understand that. But looking at the schedule, it's something that I really thought was possible. And I think a lot of people said, "Hey, we could see Florida State. That's a neutral site game. It's a pretty good team. They've been in the playoff recently, but no one seems to be accepting of Alabama ever being able to lose to Mississippi State. That was, I think, by most fans, completely obnoxious. And I've been accused of everything from clickbait to being a hack journalist beat writer. So not even really sure where some of it comes from.
Well, I can tell you, as a hack beat writer, you don't want to be one of us, Cole. You you stick to what you're doing. You don't want to be a hack beat writer like me. What is it about Mississippi State? Is it the spot in the schedule for Alabama? Obviously, they got a quarterback that really progressed pretty well. Dan Mullen's got a history of developing quarterbacks. And listen, on the surface, Alabama's has never lost to a Dan Mullen coached team at Mississippi State, but they've played some pretty tough games over the years.
Yeah, and listen, there's a couple things. Schedule definitely plays into it. Like you mentioned, Mississippi State will have, they'll have their bye week a few weeks before, but they'll play UMass at home the week before they play Alabama. To me, that means that's 2 weeks of preparation. And even though the kids probably won't see it that way, they won't be told that that's the way that it's going, there'll be some install for that UMass game that won't be utilized in that game. And those plays won't be called in that game, but they'll be installed and be ready to be utilized against Alabama. And Alabama has LSU the week before. Now, I'm not as high on LSU as some other folks are, but I don't think they're going to win the West, which the hilarious part of this whole thing is that I still think Alabama wins the West. But I think that I think LSU and Alabama, we would all probably agree that going into the season is going to be the most physical game on both of those team schedules. The recent history has shown that it's going to be an absolute slugfest. I mean, it's going to be a legit fist fight. I mean, you go back to that game last year, and the first thing that pops out to me watching that film is, guys like Cam Robinson playing a different style of game. Arden Key seemed to be going just a different speed. And I think even if you went back 2 years ago when LSU was absolutely dominated in Tuscaloosa, it was still a very physical matchup, and it took a toll on both teams for the next week. So how that impacts them the next week obviously depends on who they're playing. I just think that Mississippi State has a couple other pieces of the recipe that you need to upset a Nick Saban-led football team. And I think the new style of defense that they're going to be playing benefits them in how they play offensively, because let's be honest, Aaron, no matter how good quarterback play Mississippi State has, and they've had pretty good quarterback play the last few years. I think Fitzgerald would have been my all-SEC quarterback last year. I thought he was phenomenal, and I think when you base it on what he had around him and what he was still able to do, it makes it that much more impressive. And then we know about Dak Prescott and what he was able to do. But I don't think that's a team with that offense that can play bend but don't break defense, or just line up and play a lot of base defense and really be successful. I mean, when they were successful a few years ago under Jeff Collins, they were very aggressive, and they utilized 2 units. They substituted offense, so they did some things that I feel like gave them inherent advantages in games. I think bringing Todd Grantham in is going to really help the offense more than anything else, because now, and listen, they'll get beat, they'll give up some big plays, but if they're going to be more aggressive and attack and potentially find more turnovers and potentially give themselves a better field and give them an opportunity to maybe take a few more shots at the end zone with a quarterback like Nick Fitzgerald, I think that plays into maybe being more beneficial against a team like Alabama that I think probably is going to go a little bit slower this year, maybe back off tempo a little bit, and that game falls into the hands of giving Mississippi State a better chance to win. Nick Fitzgerald, I think quarterback runs off tackle, asking edge defenders to do a lot as far as how they read, how they play, forcing them to come upfield, maybe making them play flat, slowing them down in the pass rush game because of his capabilities to be a quality runner between the tackles and outside the tackles is an area that Mississippi State can also take advantage of Alabama. Here's what would be the scary thing for me, Aaron, as far as, I mean, first off, I don't think that much of Nick Fitzgerald. I think he got a chance to be the best college football player next year in the SEC. I'm not saying he's that right now, but he has a chance to be. And see, the thing that we have to do now in the media, like that you brought up earlier, is I have to asterisk that with does not mean he's the best pro prospect, because Jacob Eason will be drafted before he will, and people will say, oh, see, you're out of your mind, you were stupid. And Jalen Hurts will win more games, but people say, like, oh, see, we told you so. But as far as just best college football player, I think for his team and his system and what he does based on what he has, I think there's a good chance it's going to be Nick Fitzgerald next year. And I think that when you look at going into this season, think about these Alabama defenses the last 2-3 years. We've seen the next wave of guys contribute, even in sort of a minor way, have a smaller role, but we've seen enough to know really and truly what they are. I'm getting guys that are tweeting me that no way Mississippi State can handle Isaiah Buggs off the edge. How in the hell do I know who can handle Isaiah Buggs off anywhere? I haven't seen him play a snap of college football. I don't know that. Now, we saw Denzel Duval and Dylan Lee a few years ago in a smaller role what they were going to do the next year. We saw Tim Williams. We saw Jonathan Allen move out there. Ryan Anderson played a lot 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We had an idea what they were going to be. Now, a lot of people are jumping on that Christian Miller is the next big edge guy for Alabama. And, Aaron, he might be. I just haven't really seen the next wave of great Alabama edge guys perform at a level that makes me say, wow, this is going to be troublesome for everybody. I thought that last year coming in because I saw him do it, and I saw him doing a lot. Now, the interior of that defense, no one wants any part of that because I think Deshaun Hand, and he's a guy that can probably move around a little bit. Darren Payne, I've told you this. I think he's the next superstar defensive tackle in Tuscaloosa. He might end up being the best defensive tackle that Nick Saban has had, unless maybe you want to quantify Jonathan Allen as that, but I don't think he's a true G tackle at the next level. But he's going to be fantastic. And I just think that some of the areas that we haven't seen as much, that haven't contributed as early as some of the guys have in the past, might lead to Mississippi State being able to take advantage of those areas. And finally, I think Dan Mullen's a really good football coach. And Dan Mullen has yet to call a good game against Alabama. And at some point in time, I think he's going to look back and say, you know what, I tried to do this, this, and this, and it didn't work. I need to rethink my strategy going up against this kind of a football team. And I think he has the capabilities to devise a successful plan.
Talking to Cole Cubelic, the SEC Network sideline analyst, who also threw out there, breathe, people. We haven't even gone through spring practice. This was an answer to an innocuous question that Cole gave his honest opinion to. And I'll also say, while everyone was tooting Tennessee's horn last year, Cole quietly predicted Florida to win the SEC East. How did that work out? Cole, in terms of the Florida State game, what is it about Florida State that you like? Obviously, they've recruited among the elite in college football, and you can make an argument this will be the best neutral site opponent that Alabama's had in kind of these neutral site first games of the year.
Well, the first thing that sticks out is coaching. I think they have one of the better coaches in college football. I mean, Jimbo Fisher has a recent national championship. So I think when you add the coaching up, that this is a team that will be able to devise a plan to be competitive against Alabama. I also think that from a speed and athleticism standpoint that this is a team that can match up across the board with Alabama. Big and physical inside. Derek Nottie is one of the better nose guards in college football. I mean, he is a big physical nightmare for guys on the inside. That'll be a matchup problem. Josh Sweat has a chance to be an elite pass rusher on the edge. He plays that buck linebacker position. The loss of DeMarcus Walker will be tough. I don't know if they have another guy like him coming back that can move inside, outside, and really be an elite pass rusher at a 3 technique over the guard or even outside the tackle. He was the guy for people who maybe only watched the Florida State opener that absolutely wrecked that Ole Miss offensive line week 1, but he did that through the entire season. He led the nation in sacks last year. So he'll be tough to replace. I think DeAndre Francois at quarterback, a guy who is mobile and not necessarily going to bring a boatload of quarterback runs, design runs, but Jimbo can move the pocket, help avoid that pass rush. He can force that defense to run, and Jimbo's not afraid to go tempo. He doesn't live and die by it, but I think he can up the ante a little bit. They have a strong group of receivers returning. They utilize the tight end position, which gives you some bonus bigs you're going to need to be able to handle some of the Alabama front seven. Now, the one thing that I will say that I don't like about the Florida State matchup with Alabama is the offensive line. Florida State's offensive line didn't play good football last year. If they play in a similar fashion to the way that they did the majority of 2016, they'll probably get their brains beat in because it won't matter who Alabama's lining up in the defensive line. You can't turn guys loose, and you can't allow guys to run past you and give up sacks and give up tackles for losses. But I just think from a speed perspective and athleticism perspective that this team matches up very well. They have some guys up front on that defense that are going to be very problematic, can penetrate, can disrupt, and cause problems in a new offense with a lot of young faces up there. Let's be honest, no matter how you play it, it's still going to be a young quarterback. He'll have 13 starts under his belt, 14 starts under his belt, but he's going to be young. You'll be younger in the backfield. You're going to be young at one tackle, maybe at right tackle and right guard, so that's one side that brings a lot of youth to the table. I just think it's probably a matchup problem for Alabama because the speed and athleticism may even lie with an advantage Florida State across the board, whereas physicality will probably still be advantage Alabama. I don't think it's a very good matchup, and I think Jimbo's a pretty good coach.
And again, Cole doesn't need me sticking up for him, but if you think Cole is biased, I want you to go look at his Twitter account and look at all the wonderful things he said about Jonathan Allen and how even when people were slamming Cam Robinson, Cole kind of had his back. So again, he didn't need me sticking up for him, but this whole he's biased thing gets under my skin. Wrapping up here with Cole Cubelic, SEC Network sideline analyst, also the host of the Cube Show up in North Alabama. Do you know much about this Brian Daboll, and what did you make of that hire? Do you think, you kind of referenced earlier, you think Alabama's going to slow down some this year on offense? Do you think that is kind of what predicated that hire?
I think so. I think that Nick Saban is still his focus is going to be defense. Now he'll tell you balance every time you get a chance to speak to him, and that's something that he believes in. But I do believe still that he thinks defense wins championships, and that team's going to be built around playing solid defense. So I think when he sees 99 plays being run in a game and him not being able to, he wants to have multiple ways to control that. And if your defense can't control it or stop it, then he wants to be able to control it or stop it with his offense. I had Brady Quinn, former Notre Dame and NFL quarterback, on my show. He had Daboll as an offensive coordinator in Kansas City and in Cleveland. And we talked to Brady just about what he thought Daboll's mindset would be coming in. And he said, listen, make no mistake about it. If there's one thing that I took away from having Brian Daboll as my offensive coordinator, it was he's going to run the football. He's like, so get ready for power football because they will run the ball. He said they'll utilize tight ends. Said he's a tireless worker, tireless preparer, and said he's a guy that made football fun for him. And I've talked to Jeff Schwartz, former NFL offensive lineman that played in his system as well, and he said it's a very simple system. But if you put that together, a lot of people would say, well, it lacks complexity, so that's something that Alabama's going to get caught with. But when you're dealing with more times than not better athletes, more talented athletes, simplicity can be a beautiful thing. I mean, I can remember when Noel Mazzoni came in under Tommy Tuberville, and we really simplified things under them, but we did it in a way that was going to be difficult for people to predicate. And we went off what defenses gave us, and that made it complicated, even though for us it was very simplistic. So I think it's a good hire. It's easy for us to say it's not a great hire just because of the unknown. And that's really the only knock on that hire that I can find is the unknown. He doesn't have experience recruiting. He hasn't been a college coordinator, so we don't really know how he's going to operate in that position. But I don't think that should necessarily lead us immediately to say he's not going to be able to be successful doing this. If he can manage quarterbacks, and I don't mean physically as far as footwork, arm strength, keeping shoulder square, I mean the mental part of the game. If he can become sort of a quarterback speaker, because that's going to be a very young position for Alabama this fall, then I think it ends up being a great hire.